Okay, let's talk about appraisal. So now we've gotten past inspection, and now we're at the point of doing the appraisal. We do want to point out they normally don't order the appraisal until after your inspection in case you decide you don't want to buy the house. That appraisal, once it's done, you have to pay for. So just kind of be aware of that. But in this market, you may have to order your appraisal early because they're taking a long time because there's so much going on.
You order it early, but it's typically not done until the second half or the second part of the process. It's usually in the last couple weeks.
So Chad, what is an appraisal?
So the appraisal is done by an appraiser, different industry, and their job is basically to determine market value of a home. And really, with an appraisal on a purchase like this, their real job is basically to say, hey, lender, this home was purchased for market value. Because they're there to protect the buyer, they're there to protect the lender. What they don't want to have happen is someone who lives in a market where prices are much higher than our market come in and pay more for a home thinking it's a bargain when really it's overpriced. And the appraiser is there to help make sure that they protects the buyer, because the buyer doesn't want to find out 2 years later they paid $50,000 more for their house and then they're upside down on the house. The same thing is if it's lower, they want to find out why. And so their job is to make sure, hey, then they'll usually get a copy of the contract. They know how much the home's sold for or is under contract for, and their job is to say, yeah, this is right or this is wrong, and move forward.
Okay, so once the appraisal is done, who gets to see it?
Well, you as the buyer, you ordered it and you pay for it, you get to see it for sure. It's actually a law that it's sent to you before closing, so you have the chance to review that.
Gotcha.
One of the things I'd add to Chad is that the purpose is also to avoid some collusion that happened pre-2009 where appraisers and builders were in cahoots. And so you can rest assured that the lender can't even choose who appraises the property. And so it's a completely disinterested third party that goes out and finds comparable sales, compares it to your property, and says, this property is worth X amount because of the other activity in the market.
So when does the appraisal happen?
So the appraisal happens kind of in the latter part of the stage of while you're under contract. It's kind of expensive. It's about $500 usually, and the lender does not want to be caught with that bill at the end if the deal falls apart. So they don't want to have it done before the inspection typically, and so it's done more towards the latter part of the transaction.
Gotcha.
And many times you won't get the appraisal back until a week before closing.
That's right.
Week and a half. Yeah.
So who owns that appraisal then? If the lender ordered it, who owns it?
Yeah, the lender ordered it in your name and most likely with your funds, so you own that appraisal.
What if I disagree with the value that they come back on?
Yeah. Well, typically,
what if I think it's worth more?
Well, then say that's awesome, because, you can go to the seller and say, hey, I want to pay more, let's raise the price. Yeah. Probably don't want to do that. Many times, though, it might come in lower. And that can be exciting, too, because, there's a contingency in the contract that says that if it comes in lower, then the seller has to either drop the price or the seller can actually cancel the contract and agree not to. So if it comes in a little bit lower, you'll probably have to change the price. If it comes in a lot lower, the deal might fall apart. So it isn't always good news when it comes in lower. But the main thing also is maybe the appraiser missed something. And so communicate with your agent. The agent will be able to know, kind of already have a feel for if the property is priced right or not. Many times we have properties come in lower and then we're able to find a different comparable, one that sold, for sale by owner down the street. And if you can show some comparables that are driving your value, then you'll be able to maybe get the value where it needs to be.
Yeah. If the value comes in low, can the seller, will the seller always come down in price? Or
no.
What happens?
And just like Chad's saying, is that there's multiple options that you do not have to proceed with the purchase of the home. So the appraisal's low, you don't have to buy it. But at certain times in the market and certain types of properties, we've seen buyers just buy it anyway, but the lender will only use the purchase price or the appraisal whichever is lower to base their loan amount off of. And their loan is usually a percentage of purchase price or appraisal. And so that will affect your financing for sure. And so it's negotiable at that point, and make sure you get with your agent and figure out what direction you want to go and take to the seller.
Gotcha. So, Chad, how long does the appraisal take?
The appraisal doesn't take too long to actually complete. I mean, it depends on how busy they are. You might have to order it 2 weeks in advance or 3 weeks in advance. But when the appraiser actually goes out there, most of the work is done in the office. You know, just doing the comparable searching and you know, putting in the different the data on the home and comparing it with others. But when they go out to the home, I mean, sometimes they're only there for 5 or 10 minutes. They a lot of times already have the information on the home. They just need to go there and make sure that the basement's really unfinished. Or if it's finished, make sure it's really finished. Or make sure there's really carpet in there. Make sure that the toilets are still in there. And just make sure that it's the way it was represented. And then they measure it, you know, for square footage. And once they have that data, then most of the work is done in the office. And then once they get the appraisal done, or once they do the inspection of the property, the lender will typically have that appraisal within 3 business days. Gotcha. And then once the lender has it, then they can provide a copy to the buyer. So you'll have a copy of it within about a week of the inspection.
Gotcha. So the big holdup is scheduling.
Scheduling.
Yeah. So if it's a slow market, you could get it within a week.
Yeah, or less.
Yeah. If it's a busy market, you could be 30 days.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. Jeremy, is it like the home inspection? So you said it was only 10 minutes. Aren't they inspecting the home?
Just like Chad's saying, they are inspecting the home and measuring it, but it's not their job to make sure the furnace works. It's not their job to make sure that things are working. They just have to number the bedrooms, they number the bathrooms, they get the square footage, they say, oh yes, there is a kitchen, there is 3-car garage, and then they take, and some take 10 minutes, some may take 30, but then they just verify on property, and then they go back to their office and finish it up.
So will they ever say that something needs to be repaired?
No, unless it's a government loan. Oh. And the government loans will have a safety or additional inspection that says, you know, chipping paint, things like that.
Handrail, no exposed wiring, broken windows,
right.
Things like that they don't like with government loans.
Can I be there like I was at the home inspection?
I mean, no. I mean, you typically aren't made aware of, as a buyer, of when you're there. And the appraiser, I mean, they want the appraisers to not really have contact with the buyer or the seller, you know, or even the lender. They want the appraiser to be totally disinterested, unbiased, and just do their thing.
That's right.
So
Got it.
Best if you're not there.
Yep.
Okay. Well, this is good information, which means with good information,
you can
make good decisions.